I no longer see food as a treat or something to get necessarily excited by, because I now see it as a necessity. I need to eat, and therefore I can make better choices. Um, but so, as part of what you do at Streamline Surgical, you offer different types of surgery to people. What are those different types? What are the differences
So,
between them as well?
so we've undergone in the last sort of 5 years, especially with the advent of the new injectable drugs, which are great, they really work well. But we now view obesity as a spectrum of diseases. So, if I can use the analogy of blood pressure again, if someone says to you, "I've got high blood pressure," it could mean a little bit up, or it could mean sky high blood pressure. It's a spectrum of severity. And it's the same with obesity and metabolic derangement or metabolic disorders. You can have a bit of it or it can be really bad. Now, obviously, with obesity, someone who's very, very overweight has a severe form of the problem that is going to need a strong treatment. Someone who's a little bit overweight, or they're a little bit overweight with metabolic syndrome, the fatty liver, the diabetes, they might need a strong treatment too, because actually we've got to reverse the high cholesterol and the blood pressure. Otherwise, they're going to have a heart attack. So you don't want to be messing around with a weak treatment. You want something that's going to do the job. And so we now see all the different treatments that we have available as a spectrum. And that's why it's really important, fundamentally important, for people who are considering having treatment for obesity or metabolic syndrome to speak to someone to give them advice, because you can't figure it all out for yourself just looking on the internet. That's why at Streamline Weight Loss, as we now call it, because we do the injections, we do the non-invasive treatments, and we do the invasive treatments like surgery. We have a whole sort of spectrum of treatments we can use for people who might not need one or the other, but they just need a bit of direction. So if you went to the chemist or bought a blood pressure monitor and you saw your blood pressure was sky high, would you go on the internet, look at the different sorts of tablets for blood pressure and go, "I'll try that one," and give it a go yourself? Just, you wouldn't, would you? You'd go, "No, no, I'll go and see the doctor, and the doctor can tell me what tablets he thinks are going to be best." When it comes to obesity, they don't do that. They go online, they go, "Oh, I'll have some of that M word or the W word," and and they'll go buy the injection. They fill out the form, go buy the injection, which there are many pharmacies out there who will just sell you whatever you like without asking you a single person to person question by a doctor talking to you about exactly what it is it you need. What are your liver tests like? What is your blood pressure? All this kind of stuff that informs what kind of options are likely to work. Yes, the injections will get your weight down a bit, but is it going to bounce straight back the second you stop them? In which case, you might as well have had a stronger, proper treatment and saved yourself a lot of money by having a very simple, straightforward operation.
I do want to talk to you about the weight loss injections, actually, but before we do, just very quickly. So the different before we come on to the GLP-1s, the different surgeries that certainly
Yeah.
that you would perform. I know that when I 21 years ago, I had in 2004, I had a band fitted, not by you. I had to go up to Birmingham, had problems with it, and you thankfully converted that, well, took out the band and converted it to a Roux-en Y bypass. And I know you still do the bypass. What else do you do? Because I don't, am I right in saying the bands are not as common as they used to be?
Not as common. They're a good operation for the right people. So principally, I would do a band in the very young, because they need something that is not going to damage particularly their stomach, their gullet, their digestive system. We're not cutting their stomach away at all. we're just going to restrict how much they can eat, because in likelihood, if someone aged anywhere between, say, 14, 15 and 25, if they're already struggling seriously with their weight, it's likely they're going to need treatment lifelong. So let's start with something simple and reversible, like a band, and then we can move up the treatment scale later on if they still need it, which is very likely. So we do still do bands, but less frequently than we used to, because there are probably better alternatives that work much better. And the operations that are in common use now are the sleeve gastrectomy, which is pretty simple on paper, but in my view, to do it properly, it's one of the most complex operations to do properly in a way that it's going to last. Everyone thinks it isn't. It's a simple op. Oh, I'll have a sleeve, I'll have a sleeve. If you have a badly done sleeve, it's a disaster for the individual. Your life is never going to be the same, and you're going to have it changed to a bypass. So you're going to have 2 operations now, not the one that you thought you needed. Again, this is about having a consult with someone who knows what they're doing, who does this for a living in the NHS as well as privately, because it's my specialty. So you want to go to a proper bona fide bariatric surgeon and have it done properly, not some bloke in Turkey who you've never heard of, or some bloke in the UK. Although it's rare in the UK now to get non-bariatric surgeons having a go, but in the past it was, Wild West. So we do the sleeves, we do the bypasses, and there's 2 sorts of bypass now. What we call a loop bypass used to be called the mini bypass, but there's nothing mini about it. It's a bypass. And the Roux-en-Y bypass. And I tell people, please don't get hung up about which sort of bypass you want, because it's not a decision that unless you do a medical degree and train as a surgeon, it's not a decision you're going to be able to weigh up the pros and cons of. It's a decision that is really down to what the surgeon feels is going to work best for you, so that you get on with your life without thinking, oh my God, I can feel a bypass in there. Because you can't. You get on with life, you feel normal, other than you can't eat that much and you're not that hungry. So we do the sleeve, the bypass. There are a number of other operations that are being trialled and tested. The bigger ones, things like a duodenal switch, the malabsorption operations, we tend not to do, because long term there are big problems with those in terms of developing osteoporosis and other sorts of metabolic disorders, because you've bypassed most of the gut. And if I'm honest, whilst the weight loss is great in those operations, the longer term side effects of those operations are not great. And I think most people who've had those big operations, the malabsorption operations, when they're sort of 15, 20 years into them, are going, I'm not sure I'm enjoying this anymore.